Go ahead and get this party started. What is
Whoop,
happening, my
whoop.
good friend Luke Darling? How are you?
What is cooking, my man? Doing good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So, welcome everyone. I'm Brett Matzer. I'm here with Luke Darling. This is the Luke and Brett Show. Today, we're going to have a conversation that I think is relevant to everyone, especially in our shifting market. But it's also relevant outside of a shifting market, and that is to how to generate seller and buyer leads now. Not in 6 months, not in 12 months. We're looking for to get those leads now. And the reason why Luke and I decided to do this subject is when you look at any type of uh, system, any type of process, when we're looking at real estate, the end goal here is not to get a client. The end goal here is to get paid a commission. So what do you have to do to get paid a commission? Well, you have to sell a transaction. What do you have to before that? Well, you have to meet with a buyer or seller, or you have to show a buyer, get business. So as you continue to go back and back and back and back and back, the very, very first step is you got to find a lead. That's it. So that's why we decided to do this. Now, what's interesting, Luke, is I think, you know me, I'm really big on skills, very big on role playing, very big on practicing objection handling. But I think that if you wanted to throw all of that out of the window, if all you did was just focus your effort on getting leads, it doesn't matter how bad you are. You're going to convert some. Well, that's not true. You need to have a system. You need to understand the workflow of a transaction. You need to have a form of a process. But for the most part, like I know some really, really, really good people on the phone, objection handling. So do you. We know a lot of the same people, and they're broke because every time they get a lead, it's like feast or famine. They've got to be their A game to get that one deal. Whereas you got these people that
Yeah.
aren't that great, but they're swimming in leads, and them closing 1 out of 10 is better than someone closing 1 out of 1.
Yeah, there's obviously new conversations and just conversations in general is the lifeblood of anybody. You say it very often. It's like if people don't know you, they can't do business with you. If you're not having conversations with these people, you're those deals, you're never going to win those deals. And so, I mean, especially in a market where we're at right now, like the skills are really important. But if we're not having those, if we're not having enough conversation, we still need to be having, you know, new conversations every day or conversations every day. And, it's like the broken clocks right twice a day type of a thing where yeah, you can if you have enough deal flow or opportunity flow, you're gonna just by default, you're gonna step into something at some point in time. So, having that abundance can definitely help. Even the people with minimal skills be able to stay, keep their head above water. Which obviously right now in today's market, and like back in like 2008, there's a lot of people that went out of, they took themselves out of the market. They're not, we're no longer active participants. And, I'm seeing a lot of this, I'm retiring, chatter right now when we're talking to agents. They're like, yeah, I'm going to retire. Or I'm going to
Yeah, I've been
take
there,
some
done
time.
that. I'm
I'm
not
going to
doing
take
that
some
again.
time off. I'm
I've
going to take
seen
some
that
time
movie.
off. You're like, yeah, you're, it's, so, um, so
And
yeah,
with
great topic.
that, one of the popular sayings, and we've known each other a long time, so you've got to hear all my sayings, my dad jokes included, is even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then, right? And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, but that's the saying, and it goes to show that even somebody who is horrible at real estate, even somebody who doesn't know the process very well, even though they may operate like they just rolled out of bed every day, um, even they can get a transaction if they're actively in the process of looking for leads. So
Mhm.
One of the things I wrote down to kind of dive into this is to generate now business, and we were talking about this before I hit the record button. To the one way that I know for sure, if somebody's starting from scratch and you don't have a sphere of influence, or maybe you have a sphere of influence, but they don't know you're in real estate, which is, mistake number
Hmm.
one. But number one thing is you've got to go old school. You've got to go traditional sales activities. You've got to go out and just make sure that you're initiating those conversations, because if you're not having those conversations, you have a zero chance of getting anything closed.
Right.
So, um, but you do very well on the digital side things too. So I think it's one of the things that you have to have a happy balance. But if you're starving, if you need to put food on the table in the next 60 days, you need to get out there and start having conversations with people who own property in your market.
Yeah. There's so many different um, you know, parts of the spectrum of like where people are at in their business. You have like maybe newer people who don't have a book of business or don't have a sphere of influence. You have people that have been in the game for a long time. And a lot of them still like, they're not doing a whole lot of transactions. So a lot of it has more to do with the volume of business that you're doing and the things that maybe you should be doing or could be doing at that point in time. So kind of taking a snapshot of like somebody who's more along the lines of like production volume, the deal a month or a deal every other month type of person that doesn't have the capital, and they got to put in that sweat equity to kind of get up there. um, I'm a big believer of, even when times are hard or even when times are thin, like going twice as hard. Sometimes it can be challenging to do that for a lot of people, but doubling down on your effort, doubling down on your marketing. We're seeing a market contracting, a lot of companies pulling back on their team. I'm hiring and recruiting for me. Like I'm doubling, intend on doubling my team over the course of the next 60 to 90 days. To so That's my general approach to things. You can gain market share, lean in, and but for those folks that are getting rocking and rolling, man, you're gonna have to grind it out, right? Making those phone calls, doing those activities, and whether it's on the phone, or just low or no cost type activities to drum up the business. um, got to do it. You got to double down if you want to be in the business after certain in these low times.
Well, and let me do that. I was pulling up a website that I have access to. Now, this is based off the data from the CRMLS. Now, it's not relevant to everybody in the country, but being
Hmm.
that it's the largest MLS in the country, most of it's California. It kind of gives a snapshot of what's really kind of going on as I see it. Now, this is the entire MLS. I can break this down by city. I can break this down by market. Let's get your head fixed. Here's what we're seeing. Over here on the left is the adjustment year over year. So it's adjusted for seasonality. So if I go into new listings, we're looking down 21.9% compared to this time last year. So there are nearly 22% fewer new properties coming onto the market as it did a year ago. Active listings, we're down 21.3%, right? So again, down compared to last year. That's a big indicator because we always talk about the supply and demand. Pending home sales down 41%. As you go down more local, there are some areas in California like Irvine down 60%. Here's the
Hmm.
thing with pending home sales is pending home sales is it's gauging what the closings are going to be 30, 60, 90 days down the road. So if you're
Right.
minus 41% now, what are closings going to look like? Let me see, we're in what, September? So what are they going to look like in November? November slows down
Right.
anyways, but check this out. Closed sales down nearly 30%. So if we're down 40% now, down 41, nearly 41%, and we're already down year over year at 28%, what is that going to look like in November, December time?
Right.
But then we kind of go up into, days on market. It's trickling up. It's up nearly 90. In California, uh, most properties would sell in a few days. It was ridiculous. There was a market time that I calculated at one time here in Irvine. It was like 4 days. Now it's 17 in all of the MLS. But you can see where it used to be. I mean, you go back to the peak, 2019, it was 36 days. Pre-pandemic, 2021, let's go March. It was 24 days pre-pandemic. Month supply, minus 4.2. That's interesting. And that has something to do with the active listings coming down. But then you start looking at the sales price, and sales price still going up. Now, I wanted to share that. Number one is, so, we are in a shift. The conversations that I'm having with these local real estate leaders across the country, regardless of market, some markets are adjusting faster than others. You're starting to see, different things are happening at different times. But I think the consensus is things are definitely shifting. But here's the other thing that we know is in the history of, since I've been on this planet, since I've been in real estate, in any type of market, homes will sell.
Yeah.
We met during the Great Recession. I was killing it in the Great Recession with a national team. You just have to skate where the puck is. And I think it kind of goes into keeping this into the structure of lead generation is, I can't remember who said this. I'll have to go back and look and who quoted this. But you have to start entering the conversation that the person's already having in their head. So when we start talking about leads, we start talking about sellers, we start talking about buyers. Sellers, what are they worried about? Well, they're worried about losing their equity. Most of them are. Buyers, what are they worried about? Well, they're worried about interest rates not being able to buy. There are other things. So as far as going into it, I think people are making a huge mistake on lead generation by not focusing on the psychographic of who they're looking for. Not everybody's a good candidate. For instance, somebody who probably bought a house in the last 4 or 5 years here in my market, probably not going to buy a house in the next 30, 60, 90 days. But someone who's owned a home for 10 years, maybe they're probably more likely that they're going to buy a property if you're just looking at it from a statistical standpoint. But old school prospecting. If somebody wanted to do a deal now, they're new to the market, maybe new to the business, don't have a really large sphere of influence, I would say circle prospecting. Choose an area, like I've talked about, I think in like 2 or 3 episodes ago. Take where you live, stick that as your center point, get a styrofoam cup, draw a circle around it. Everything inside is your market area. Get a list of all the homeowners in that area and get their phone numbers. I mean, it's going to cost a few bucks, but good data typically isn't free.
Yeah.
And start contacting them. Start reaching out to them. Let them know what's going on in the market.
Absolutely.
Are you looking to sell your home?
Do you know anybody who wants to sell?
So I have to create a training that I'm going to be doing next week. And even though we're not going to be doing much traveling, still got to take it on the road a little bit. And it's how to grow your business in a shifting market, similar to what we're talking about here. And that probably had something to do with me suggesting this topic. But I really had to kind of think about this back when I had to do this because, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Interestingly, the conversation that I have with most real estate agents is that the sky's not falling, everything's fine. And that it's the exact same conversation that we were having in 2007 at the same time. And nothing was wrong until it was wrong, until it was bad. And the argument is that supply and demand, there's too much demand right now for prices to come down. And I don't disagree with them. Based on a snapshot right now, I would have to probably be in that camp. But I think what people aren't seeing is that if we can all agree that we're in a shifting market, meaning that we shifted a direction, if in fact prices are going to come down, don't they have to level out first before they can actually go down? I mean, isn't that part of a shift? Isn't that part of a transition?
Right.
You know, if the economy is true to whereas we have double digit inflation, much like in the 80s, and you and I have talked about this, if they calculated the, well, actually, it's not double digit, but if they calculated the inflation the same way they did in the 80s, we would be in double digits. We'd be worse than what we were in the 80s if they used the
just
same math.
just take a look at a couple single items, and we can all do that math. They can, you can manipulate numbers to say whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
But how much are you paying for eggs, compared to what you were paying last year? How much is gas? How
Our
much
grocery
is
bills
this?
went up.
Yeah, right. Was it was
But
it was it just a single digit, or was it double digit? I mean, there's your basket
yeah,
of goods there.
yeah. So I was talking to this agent. I said, okay, well, let's look at this from a logical standpoint. Um, Assuming that everybody spends 100% of what they earn, and they're not putting anything into savings, but
Mhm.
assuming that, and they're not taking, California is notorious for keeping up with the Joneses. So typically they spend 130% of what they earn. But let's just say that everybody sticks with 100% of what they earn. If costs are going up, if costs are going up, if real estate's going, prices continue to go up, if real estate rents continue to go up,
Mhm.
electricity, gasoline, if everything's going up, and then there's downward pressure on jobs, income, and wages, so people are earning more, what does that say? Like, does that say to you that those are the fundamental elements that things are going to continue to go up? So I don't know. But going back into the lead generation, I think that one of the things when you talk to these sellers, you need to have a conversation with them is that, look, if you sell right now, there is a, you know me and my in my words, there's a 100% probability that you'll likely sell this home significantly more than what you had bought it for, or in the around the most you could sell it for in the history of forever. I like using that. However, if you wait, your gamble is a 50-50 chance, is a 50-50 gamble that you're going to start chasing the market down. Now, whether someone believes that it's going to go up or down, those are the two variables. We know
Right.
where the market's at in the here and now. We know if you put the home on the market right now, we have a really good indication of what we can sell it for. But, you know, someone's going to be wrong on whether it's going to go down. So when we start talking about uh, lead generation, entering into the conversation that people are already having, I think that's a pretty good conversation to have with a potential seller. Now, potential buyer, on the other hand, it's a little bit different because now they're thinking that, look, I don't want to buy high. I don't like buying I don't. You know, I had this person tell me that they don't buy depreciating assets. I'm like, really? Do you drive a car?
I I intentionally buy depreciating assets so I can depreciate them against my income so I don't have to pay taxes. Come on,
Let's
man,
put a
get with the
different. Let's
game.
see. It's all about optics. It's all about the way that you look at it.
There's a game here and you're not playing it right.
Yeah, there's a game here, and you're losing.
So,
Now
but
the
yeah,
buyers,
I mean,
buyers. I want to wait. You know, I think the market's going to come down. I think prices are going to come down. I'm just going to sit and wait. Okay, well let's go with that. What happens if you lose your loan program? What happens if your income adjusts? What happens if you have to change lines of work? What
right,
happens if there's so many what if scenarios that we know that you can qualify for the here and now. We know that your income, most people don't look at their most people are looking at their budgetary, their payment, not necessarily
hmm,
amount. That's why now they have like 8-year car loans, 10-year car loans, because they're getting the
right,
payment down. Um, but if you wait, what would you do if you lose your loan? Do you want to be a rent? I mean, so there's a lot of different.
right,
I think and this is where the skills come in. You really need to ask those questions on the what if scenarios on how to do this. So
right.
that's one traditional marketing. But on the other thing, if we're talking about somebody who they have more time than they do money, so they can put more sweat equity into something than not, And so we're talking about that. You're going to have to
Right.
go what we refer to as old school, but you need to put a new age twist on it too, because it doesn't cost you anything to create your own content. It doesn't cost you anything to post a video on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything to post that video or a post onto Facebook. There's a
Right.
lot of things that doesn't cost anything that people aren't doing. Yeah, if you want to scale it really quickly, you got to throw a few bucks behind it. But you need to start creating that content, A, and then B, then worry about deploying it.
Hmm.
Don't worry about deploying the content that you don't have, right?
So I mean, there's a few. I mean, there's only really like five ways to get customers. You got cold or outreach. You have content, ads, affiliates, and then referrals. And pretty much everything can be grouped within those five buckets, and they are so touching on some of the old school, you can do like so the taking the old school activities, the phone calls, and um and applying that to some of the resources that we have access to now. um, a really, really good example of this is, and you've probably heard, the saying, it's going down in the DMs, is looking at taking these old school activities, the phone calls, the circle prospecting, and applying them with, an online, bridging that to the online. um, and this is one of the things that I've taught and shared with people, and shared stuff is, you know using your Facebook profile or Instagram or LinkedIn profiles. Those are your CRMs, right? You can have 5,000 leads in your Facebook profile. Like, you're allowed to have up to 5,000 contacts. That's 5,000 leads that you can get connected with in your local market. You have local Facebook groups. We've all seen these. Sometimes there's like moms groups or school groups or just local buy and sell type stuff. And you can go in there, and you can friend request, a dozen, 2 dozen, people a day, and build up your database just doing that, and doing really simple activities where you're able to reach that many people, or reach out to new people every single day in your market, and sharing stuff where, and this is where we kind of bridge that to that content portion, where you can just share stuff like, simple posts like, hey, you know if you were to, sell your home today, like, top dollar type of a thing, where now you have people starting to raise their hands slowly, or, reaching out, and that, hey, I know, they know you're in the business. So that's another like low cost thing that a lot of people know that they should be doing, but they're not doing, and expanding their circle. And that's as easy as just sending out a friend request. You can send out 20 new friend requests a day to people in your market. And if you're not willing to be friends with people like online, then probably not the best business for you to be in, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to get over that stigma of like, I don't want to do my business on, like, nope, sorry, that ship sailed.
Well, you
Like, you,
also you can't be a secret agent. So
yeah.
I'm part of multiple Facebook groups. Most of them are exclusive to real estate professionals,
Mhm.
and you would be surprised at how many people don't even have the fact that they're in real estate in their profile. So this goes back to people do business who they know, like, and trust, and they know they're in real estate. They might know, like, and trust you, but if
Mhm.
they don't know you're in real estate, you're not getting that listing. You're not getting that sale.
Right.
And that ties into one of the things that you taught me how to do on generating leads with what you called a I believe you called it a social funnel, social media funnel. Is that what you called it?
Profile funnel.
Profile funnel.
Yeah.
And that's where you have the header, you have a call to action in your header, you have bait on there, how to sell your home in Irvine, California for top dollar, even in a
Right.
shifted market. And then you have a graphic button that links it to something, and then they click on that, and it takes them to their page, and they can download. So that's you taught me how to do that. But then you took it a step further to what you said is that once you build out that profile funnel, now you go out and invite people to be your friend.
Right.
But I think you told me that it may have changed because it's been so many years. Um, don't do more than 20 a day. That's probably changed just because of the number of people that probably do it. But I think
Yeah,
it,
the yeah, I mean, for just like some very practical stuff on that regard is, I mean, usually, I mean, if for any normal person that's, doing business, day to day, um, you know, 2025 new friend requests a day is totally fine, right? You can grow. You look at that over the course of a week, if you're just doing it 5 days a week, you have another 100 people in your, potentially in your pipeline or in your network every week,
yeah,
right? And statistically speaking, 3% of the entire general public is, in the market at any given time. That's three potential people a week that you could be doing business that could be in the market right now.
yeah. And then the next step, as I go through my memory, in fact, I ought to create a training on this, was after you do that, go and sign up for multiple local groups online
Mhm.
and just start answering people's questions. Because
Yeah,
the behavior of the consumer is once you answer a question, the first thing somebody's going to do is they're going to creep your profile.
100%.
And if they're in the market for buying or selling real estate, now they know that you're a real estate agent, and perhaps that could be, worthy. So, as I see it, going back to one of the sources of business. So I look at some primary sources to get business. Number one is your sphere of influence. Number two is circle prospecting. Number three is expireds. Four, for sale by owners. A lot of people lump those in together. I don't.
Hmm.
I think they're very uniquely different type of business. What they're looking to do is much different than what someone else is doing. And then the three Ds: death, divorce, and default. As I was talking to another real estate agent, focuses on probates. I mean, if you want I think I shared this story with you. Maybe it was in a previous, I forget. Anyways, um, focus on probates. Doing
Hmm.
40, 50 transactions a year, probates, average sales price about 800,000. So do the math on what kind of commission that is. And the question was the price point. Now that's a lower than average slightly in Orange County on price point. That's probably like 3 times a lot of areas, but here in
Right.
Orange County, California, that's lower than average. And they can't figure out why they can't higher their price point. And I'm like, well, it's because you're going after probates. And then I get this kind of look. I'm like, well, probates are required when somebody dies, they own real estate that's not held in a trust. And they agreed with me on that. I'm like, okay, well, how about you focus when you start looking, who are the people that typically die that don't have their property in trust? Typically, it's a lower income. Typically, it's people who aren't in the know on how to. They don't have that
Right.
foresight to do that. So if you want a higher income person that died and work with their estate, you got to start focusing on trust. Well, how do you do that? Look at death certificates. Look at death certificates, cross-reference that with owned property. Yeah, you hear me say this a lot, is that 90% of competition disappears when something gets a little bit difficult, when something
Right.
gets a little bit hard. That's not easy. That's hard, not hard. But if you just pulled death certificates in your local area, you cross-reference that, you treated it like a probate, the whole process remains the same, except you don't have to go through probate. They still have to get the house in order. They still have to probably do some renovations. They have to do some repairs. They have to empty it.
Mhm.
There's a tax consequence to them if they don't sell it in a specific period of time for the family. So it doesn't matter if the market's going up or down or sideways. This
Right.
family typically wants to sell the property. So how do you know? So that was my suggestion to them. That was roughly a few weeks ago. I haven't talked to them since. My guess is that they haven't done anything. My guess is that their reasoning for wanting to increase their purchase price, the pain and the discomfort it's going to do to try to figure out a system on how to get in front of those people
Right.
is greater than their want to raise their average sales price. We'll see. I don't know, but um, I thought that was for those of you guys that are watching. Number one, probates aren't really a saturated space in my understanding. You're not going to have a million people going after that. It's a good source of business. But then number two, you add that on to just people who look. People are going to die today who own real estate. People are going to die next month who own real estate. Why shouldn't you be the person representing them to sell their property? Because the heirs are going to want to sell it.
Hmm.
That's the way I see it.
I think that kind of just that general topic speaks to take like a framework from that, that like, hey, especially in times like this, being able to focus on life events, those people where it's there is urgency, or there is a need just based off of outside factors, versus just wanting to buy a new house, and the market being good, because that when the business goes away, where do you go to? So I mean, a lot of the types of campaigns that we're running right now for people that are performing really well are kind of around that, in like a general sense of like right sizing your homes, moving up, moving down, going after, being able to capture buyers and sellers in one swift move. But um trying to focus on like, okay, what are these motivations? So if it's people who are, maybe they're feeling the pressure of, you know financially, and they don't want to hold on to this big house, or their taxes, when I mean I don't, taxes are pretty substantial here in Texas. They're you the value of your house doubles, which wasn't uncommon for a lot of places here over the past couple years. Your taxes double. Like
You
that's,
guys, so in Texas they assess every year.
yeah, annually.
Wow.
And
So
it's
come next year when they reassess, this last couple of years, I mean, the homeowner really is going to get nailed with an increase, what, 20, 30%?
it's I mean, it could be 100% in
I mean,
some.
if it goes
Yeah.
up at the same rate, if prices have gone up 20, 30%, then that would mean that your tax base is going to go up 20, 30%, which means that
Hmm.
your taxes are going to go up 20, 30%.
Yeah.
But yet
um
people's income didn't go up 20, 30%.
right.
So in real estate, if your costs have gone up 30%, you better go out and figure out how to do 30% more business.
Right.
Actually, and if we see a contraction, if the market, if and when we see the sales price coming down and it comes down 20%, so now not only have your costs gone up 30%, but now your your commission goes down 20%. Now you need to figure out how to spread that 50% gap. All the more reason is that lead generation solves all problems.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter how cool your website is, doesn't matter how nice a car you have, doesn't matter, nothing matters except lead generation. That's it.
That is by far the number one bottleneck when we're talking to people that needs to be solved. And
Generate
we get
leads.
we get a lot of song and dance of like all these, like, if only this or only that or this, these stories about like, hey, how many new people did you talk to last month? And it's like,
And I'll tell you what, if none of your fingers come up on one hand, we've got a problem.
So it's there's definitely a common theme to that. That's the number one bottleneck every single person, every single business, I don't care what business you're in, that's the number one bottleneck that needs to be solved before you can solve any other bottlenecks after that. If you're not having enough, opportunity flow, you don't have a business.
No. So with that, I have a very easy solution for that. So if they don't have a website, they don't have anything set up, here's Brett Matsura's, and we've talked about this, so we can call this Luke and Brett's idea. Number one, I'm going to assume that they already have a real estate license or a mortgage license. I'm going to assume that they have a $1,200 phone because we're in real estate, right? Those are going to be my assumptions. My next thing I would say is number one, identify your primary market area. That's going to where you live, center point it, get a styrofoam cup, circle it. That's your list. Contact your title rep.
You need to have that number 3, the styrofoam cup. Don't
Got
skip over
three, got to have a
that.
styrofoam cup. Uh, Contact your local title vendor, title representative, and get a list of all the homeowners, including their phone numbers in that area.
Mhm.
And then start calling them. And that's really, I mean, there are scripts that you could use. There's things that you can do. You got to have some sort of deliverable. You have to have a reason to call them. What I coach and train on is around a just listed property or just sold property.
Yeah.
Maybe invite them to an open house. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but you have to have that reason on why you're calling. Uh,
Mhm.
Number one, who do you know that wants to buy this house? Or if they just sold a house or a property just sold, we've got a tremendous amount of buyers that had interest in it. We're now looking for other properties to sell them in the neighborhood. Do you know anyone that might be looking to sell? So it's the same conversation, it's just a different spin. You do that, you have 20 conversations a day, which means in order to have 20 conversations a day, you need to dial at least 200 numbers to get, it's usually a 1 in 10 answer rate. You do that and you will actually get a consistent flow of business. However, be warned, it's not fun. It's very challenging.
Right.
You and I have dialed for dollars for the longest period of time. I don't think we ever had a whole lot of fun doing it. We like the outcome of it, but we don't like doing. It's like going jogging
Mhm.
or doing yard work. You don't like it. You just like the outcome of it.
Right.
And I think that if you just do that now, we take the digital component onto it. Um, you've often heard me say that if I had to make a choice, I'd rather be popular than good. Let's work on being popular for that area. Go out, make your profile funnel on your Facebook page, create content, create a blog, get a YouTube page, start creating content. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this video, that's exactly what Luke and I are doing right here. Is we're creating a content for people who are in real estate and in mortgages. That's what we do. So this is where we practice what we preach as far as that. But then I also have a way for them to get a hold of you and to opt in and get content, or excuse me, not get content, but get information. Give them a path to get a hold of you.
The there's the one of the things that I see often is when there's just so many options of things to do. And I think there's a lot of challenges for a lot of people to just pick something and stick with it. And then also being able to, like, you know, build that skill set, and then you have your shiny object. So like phone calls for one, is something that it's not fun to do, but when you get a process down that works and you get that proficient, then creating an SOP, standard operating procedure around that. So then you can begin to hand that off to somebody else to be able to continue to do. And then you can take yourself out of that and then go do that next higher value activity that's going to produce more results. And in a lot of times, it's going to be something like creating content, becoming an authority, doing those other types of things. Um, and that it's one thing that I see so often is people turning off things at work, shifting, like feeling like they can only be doing one thing at a time, and then stopping what was working to go do something else, rather than keeping that one thing that's working and then doing something else on top of it. But most often it's having to replace. I don't care what level, there's gonna have to be some sort of human powered component to it at some point in time. So, plugging in, um, a virtual assistant to be able to make those calls for you. Like if you're going down that call route where you're calling out, doing those outbound, having your scripts that you perfect that stuff, and then having plugging somebody else in there. Right now, we're finding a lot of like really good talent, in like Mexico and South America, a lot of expats that they don't need a whole lot of money. They have really good English. Maybe they were born here,
That's
grew up
interesting.
here, went to high school, and now they're living back in Mexico. And they can, $1,000 a month to them is a great life, is a great living.
So I think we just
And
found our subject for next week. Let's talk about hiring virtual assistants. Now, I have experience in the Philippines. I have no
mhm,
idea how you're finding these people in Mexico. So I think that would be a great um, thing to talk about next week.
yeah, you could do a deep dive on that.
I'll write that one down because it always comes down to mid next week. We're like, hey, what are we going to talk about?
Right. Yeah, I would, there's a lot of stuff to be able to go over that, and I think right now, especially in like a shifting market, tightening market, like being able to have an international team, international support is critical. Like there's, hiring, um, you know, hiring in the States, when somebody wants 20,
Yeah.
$30 plus an hour, it's not sustainable to be able to, accomplish what you want to accomplish, and
Well,
still
when
have meat on the bones.
I currently have my full time VA. He's been with me for 3 years.
Hmm.
Uh, he handles a lot of the. After this video is done, he's going to go through and he's going to put all the timestamps in on it. So when it's on YouTube, they can have those chapters. So he's going to do that. Um, but when I was running a company, and you know this, I had 3 full-time appointment setters. I had 3 because usually out of the 3 don't make it because you always have to inspect what you expect. You can't just salespeople, no matter where they are, they all operate the same way. So you always gotta be role playing. You've always got to be watching what they're doing because if you give them an inch, they'll take 100 miles.
Hmm.
So, but uh, for what I was using them for is they were calling real estate agents and finding those ones who want to grow and scale. Nobody's ever interested in moving companies, but they're always interested in growing and scaling their business. So I
Hmm.
would come up with I had a free video training that they would talk about. They'd set the appointment, they'd do the video training. Uh, a lot of them would cancel, but then a lot of them would show up. And
Right.
I had typically a 1 in 3 of the real estate agents who made it to that in-person appointment ended up coming onto the company in a 60-day period.
Mm.
So now you put that onto homeowners. I have a friend who's in Washington, Seattle, and he has a workforce of, oh my gosh, he's got like a virtual uh, floor,
Army.
prospecting floor, mainly out of the Philippines, and all they're doing is calling expired listings, calling for sell by owners, calling neighborhoods, geo prospecting, and they're just following a script. And then what they do is hot transfers out
Hmm.
to, so they're qualifying them and then delivering the hot transfer to the agents. The caveat is uh, if you're not role playing daily, you're not getting any of those leads because those
Mm,
are, and it's a high split. I think it's like I think he told me at the time it was like it was like 60% to the company, 40% to the agent because they're the ones who are generating the actual leads. They're literally given layups
right.
to to agents. But
Here's your
somebody could
lay
do
down.
that.
Don't mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, somebody could do that right here, right now. Somebody could, you could go and hire someone out of the Philippines. You'd have to interview them, find out what kind of accent they have, what kind of experience. But typically, $4 or $5 an hour, put a bonus structure into it. They're calling 100, 200 numbers a day. That's part time for them on a
Hmm.
single dialer, leaving messages. Um, you do that, and that's going to just push them to a website, push them to an appointment.
Yeah.
You could do that. I don't think that the best use of the neurosurgeon isn't answering the phones. The neurosurgeon isn't following up on appointments. I think a lot
Right.
of that stuff can be outsourced so that they can focus. But in the beginning, you've got to get the flow going before you can actually start outsourcing and doing that. But let's do that. Let's talk a little bit more about outsourcing next week and in the next episode and kind of go from there.
Cool.
All right. Well, that's what we have for everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week, same time, same channel, and it'll be me and Luke talking about what do we say? Outsourcing. Talking about outsourcing. Catch you guys later.
International team.